with nature journaling is different types of coneflowers that are out there. I feel like everybody knows of this purple coneflower, Eastern purple coneflower, this like typical, even sold in big box stores type of coneflower. But there are quite a lot of other coneflowers that come in slightly different shapes. Even this black-eyed Susan, people know about black-eyed Susans, but there's some interesting coneflowers out there, and I don't know, I thought it would be fun to sit around and compare them, especially because I've seen some, big box stores actually carrying more varieties of these plants too. So that's what I want to do today. I've got watercolors out to throw color onto our sketches. I have already wet it. I've got a little spray bottle with water in it that I wet my palette with so that we've got the paints kind of soaking a bit. And I guess let's start. I neglected to date our last entry, so let me go ahead and say 6/25. Gosh, is it 6/25 already? Oh my gosh. I'm going to put our subject up there. Grab a fresh pencil that's actually sharp. And the reference site I'm using is wildflower.org. It's by the Lady Bird Johnson Garden Center. Pretty good, robust collection of information on native plants. They are focused in Texas, but a lot of our plants here in Kansas overlap with them. So you'll find a lot of species that are recognizable across, the Midwest in this database. And maybe what you should do is actually start with the one that everybody's very familiar with, this Eastern purple coneflower. So, a couple of things I'm noticing right off the bat. With this flower... Oh, hello, thank you. Thanks for the like, Becky. Oh, I just realized I covered up the acknowledgements with the way my screen was placed here. How about that? That's better. Okay, great. Right, so I'm noticing that the top of the head of the coneflower is kind of flat, like almost like a disc. So I want to try and capture that aspect of this plant first. I'm going to draw like a little disc here. And then, I don't know, just like really simplify the shape down to this sort of shape. Okay. And I love how the top of the flower you can really see here is a different color than the bottom. Okay, this is going to be quite straightforward to draw, I think. The next thing we've got is these petals. And the petals, they're not touching, I'm noticing. There's quite a bit of space in between them. They're not overly long and skinny. They're sort of, they are obviously long and skinny, but, I have definitely seen, there's some that are extremely skinny, and see how this one's like really thick. And then we have some that are extremely thin and skinny, like this one. So the pale purple coneflower is a little bit different. Let's go back to the Eastern, if I can find which tab it's in. There it is. It's narrow at the top, each petal, and then thicker toward the bottom, like a teardrop almost, where it kind of rounds out a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. So I think in order to figure out how to do this, I'm going to just draw the edges of where I think the petals should start. Since they don't overlap, really. I'm just going to kind of space them before I start drawing them. And then I'm gonna fill in some petals. Let's see, how far down do they go? Maybe like down to here? That'll work. Okay. Good morning. By the way, do let me know what's going on with you guys. Had to readjust my screen here so I could see everybody's comments. But I just planted several species of coneflower in my garden. I'm excited to see how they do. There was that pollinator sale event that happened at, gosh, was it Johnson Garden Center? Yeah, it was. So I totally picked up some plants at that. And I was kind of excited to see that they had so many different varieties of coneflower available. Okay, from now on they're quite skinny because we're looking at sort of the edge of the flower, and that's honestly not far enough up. See, I've got an eraser now, so I'm using it all the time. Okay. It's okay, it's okay. All right, now let's do this other side. And I feel like I've managed to capture the things that I wanted to capture pretty good in the shape of this. Oops, that's very thick. And let's see, it's weird that there's like one petal toward the bottom that's like underneath the others almost. I'm just gonna draw like where the tip of the petal should go as a way to sort of like keep my brain thinking about perspective while I'm drawing it. There we go. I'm being way more precise with this than I need to be. It's like, this is a nature journaling entry. Its purpose is really just to help me, and by extension us, learn about these plants. But my brain is like, no, I have to position every single petal precisely where it needs to go. I think that this exercise could be accomplished just as well by kind of going off vibes and not trying to perfectly recreate the picture, but just saying like, oh, that's what the petals look like approximately. Honestly, that might be a really good exercise to do at some point for me. Hello, welcome to the stream. Box in a box. I'm gonna go ahead and add those sepals in for the bottom of the flower head. Boop, 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 boop. And let's see, the stem comes down this way. I don't think there's really gonna be anything too special about each of the flowers' stems, except maybe that this one is pretty bare, and some of the others will have a lot more leaves going on, so we could try to capture that. I like how I've defaulted to just leaving space for 4 of them. Let's see how many we can squeeze in, though. So I'm going to go ahead and drop some color on this. I've got my water off screen. We're looking for like a rosy pink color, so I'm going to start in with my rose red. And since it's more of a pink and less of a red, I'm going to water it down quite a bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of the Prussian blue to sort of add some of that cool tone that's missing. It is purple coneflower, not pink coneflower. So we'll try to purple it up a little bit. It's not very purple, but that could also just be the color of it. So some of them are quite purple. The photo color correcting, I guess, is what I meant to say. That could be the culprit. All right, that's looking pink enough to me, or purple enough to me. So let's go ahead and do this. Fantastic. Notice I'm like trying to keep the pigment concentrated at the edges so it'll dry with like a little bit of a gradient. Be pretty sick if it worked out like that. Okay. It's really convenient for watercolor that all of these petals are so separated. Makes it really easy. Oops. Makes it really easy to actually paint them. I'm drying off my brush a little bit. I think I dropped in some pigment when actually what I meant to do is pick some of it up. I noticed that first petal was turning out a little darker than the others. I think it'll still dry pretty light, but I just wanted to even it out a little bit. All right, let's go back in and finish up these others. I am using a watercolor sketchbook today since I knew I was going to be doing watercolor. Obviously, if anybody else wants to do this along with me, feel free to use whatever medium works for you. I chose pencil and watercolor. Really anything would work. I just find that watercolor, if you haven't joined the stream before, for me, watercolor is a little bit of a way... It's a little low energy, I guess, for me. Like the paints kind of do so much of the work for you and end up looking really nice, and you can like really capture a good range of colors and stuff. So yeah, I think it's neat. I like doing watercolors for my colors. All right. So I'm gonna let that dry. As you know, gotta wait until things that are touching dry before we can add more in. I think what I'd like to do next is honestly another purple one. I had originally picked out like a bunch of yellow ones and things that had interesting shapes to the flower head, but look at this pale purple coneflower. It's so pretty, and the flower head is a very different shape from the Eastern purple, so I think it would be worthwhile to go ahead and paint one of these too. Look at how beautiful these are. Something about them just feels like, I don't know, delicate ballerinas. I don't know, even though like tutus do not look like that, but like I could see someone dancing in that, you know what I mean? It's like a Chapel Roan a Chapel Roan fit for sure. Okay, let's see. Let's do... It doesn't really feel like indicative of the species to me. Some of these are kind of crunchy, like they're older photos. How about that? That's fine. It's very pin cushiony on the top, which is interesting. Okay. So I'm going to make sure I label this one before I forget. Oh gosh, I got my hand in the wet paint. No. Eastern or, standard purple. Perfect. And this is the pale purple. What other names does it have? Just pale coneflower, I guess. It's the Pallida one. Great. It's got those really thin, skinny leaves, or petals. I don't think I've had enough coffee yet this morning, guys. That's why you're here with me, to help me. We're drawing together. We're working on waking up here with our coffee. Goodness. Okay. It's gonna be a little harder to capture this sort of pin cushiony texture on this one, I think. But we will do our best. Okay, and I think I'm going to be a little bit less precise with this one. I'm going to try to embody the thing I said before, which is like, you could just, like, instead of doing an exact copy, you could just kind of go off vibes. I like that idea. I did make this original one an exact copy, but, that's our baseline. So now we've got a baseline standard purple coneflower. We'll just go off vibes for the other one. This is very skinny leaves, very wispy, coming off of a rather round head, and I want to make sure we get the volume of these petals coming off, so I'm going to kind of indicate where they should stop on the other side of this head, and then I guess we'll just add some little wispies in there. I think that will work, and you can barely even see any sepals on this thing. Just got this like scraggly little stem. I want to give less space to the stems, actually. That way we can fit more flowers on here. Good thing I didn't paint them yet. Okay, cool, yeah. I almost stuck my paintbrush in the coffee there. Let's go ahead. This is a very pink, very, very pale flower. So I'm going to make sure I like really water down my pigments here. That's one of the tricky things about watercolor, is that managing color has a lot to do with water management. Like, you can't just mix pigments. You also have to think about the way that you're layering colors. So as long as you like have that in mind before you start dropping the color on the page, you should be good. And I'm not being precise at all with this. I'm just kind of laying it on there. And I think that'll work. I think that really captures like this pale, sort of barely there ghost of a pink. And it's a very similar shade to the purple coneflower, so we like kept those colors balanced. But yeah, now it's just wispy and pale. I really should have labeled this before I put the color on. If you're just joining the stream, welcome, welcome. My name is Rachel, and I am nature journaling today. We are looking at pale purple coneflower right now. I just finished. I'm doing a spread of coneflowers just to compare and contrast different species. Since, oh my gosh, okay, I fit that in there, we did it. Just celebrating some popular spring flowers and looking at just how much variety there is, since we tend to think of this one coneflower as being the end-all be-all coneflower. I just wanted to really sit down and compare and contrast all these different species. Cool. We got our pale purple, we got our eastern purple, and I'm going to let those petals dry before we come back in and do the heads. I do think that the seed head of the coneflower, or I guess it's not, it would turn into the seed head. Why did I call it that, though? It's, I guess just the center of the flower. This center of the flower head looks so different. That's going to be a really good way to compare and contrast when we put the colors in. I'm excited about that. I want to do this upright prairie coneflower. It's also called the Mexican hat. I think that's one of the more common. I've seen upright and Mexican hat pretty similar rates in my region. But you can look here, you probably can't see it at all, but there's a lot of different names for it. Red spike Mexican hat, long-headed coneflower, thimble flower. It's also just called prairie coneflower, which there's so many coneflowers are called prairie coneflower. That is not a good way to identify a species. Don't look at that. That'd be a really fun one to do. Maybe we'll fit this little guy over here on the side since he's quite differently shaped. Actually, let me scroll through the ones that I have picked out and see if he is indeed the best fit for that shape. Yeah, probably. Let's stick him in there. Thank you for liking the stream, Rob. Glad to have you here. I don't think I've seen you at one of the streams before. Again, if you're just joining us, we are streaming on 2 different platforms simultaneously right now. I have the stream going on Facebook, and I also have the stream going on Twitch. So if you are someone who likes to watch streamers on Twitch and you have a channel and you like getting those notifications, go ahead and follow us there. We are trying to get, I forget the threshold of viewers to be able to like customize your channel with little stream rewards and things like that. But we're working our way up there, so give us a follow there if you like. If you are one of our Facebook followers, welcome. So if you hear me talking to people that you do not see in the chat where you are, it's because I am probably talking to them on a different platform. Okay. These petals are very like short and thick. I know I'm sketching very lightly. I apologize. I should probably be doing it a little bit darker so you guys can see it. My instinct is to make it lighter so that it's not showing through on the watercolors. But I mean, that would be kind of cool stylistically. So I am gonna go ahead and try to make a point to make my things a little bit more dark for you guys. Let's see. So there is a lot of overlap on these petals, unlike the last ones I noticed. Oh, thank you, Ottawa County, Kansas Conservation District. Oh, that's awesome. It's good to have you here. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, it makes me smile. We're looking at coneflowers this morning. We're just doing a little bit of nature journaling. My intention is to take some of these streams outside eventually. But, you know, I think it's fun for us also to realize we can do nature journaling practices from the comfort of our home with our morning coffee, watching bird streams or looking at references of flowers, that sort of thing. So that when we do go out on our hikes and we do take a look outside, you know, we can use these different practices while we're out there. I love nature journaling. For me, it kind of reminds me of that old school naturalist marriage of science and art, and it just makes me really happy, and it forces me to really stop and pay attention to things and observe things, and I think that that's so important. It's easy to just go outside and be like, oh, checklist, I saw this bird, checklist, I did this many miles, blah, blah, blah. But I think a lot of the excitement and the appreciation that a lot of us have for nature just comes from like the moments we have out there and the way that we get to spend time out there. And there's so many different practices for doing that, but stopping to observe purposefully with a pen and paper or watercolors, or I don't know, even just like journaling your words, it's such a good practice to really notice what's going on out there. I get so much more joy out of journaling weird bird behaviors and sketching little things I notice outside than I do just making a life list. So I hope that doing this little nature journal exercise, if you're doing it along with me, would inspire some of you guys to add these to your practices. Couple nature journal sessions ago, we did an exercise where we I had a bunch of photos I had taken from a hike. So like instead of stopping all my friends and being like, we have to look at every single flower in exquisite detail, which we kind of did anyway, but what what I was able to do is just take photos of all the things I noticed that I thought were interesting, so that when I got home later, I could like reflect on them at that point when I had a little bit more time to sit there with it. Okay, so while I was talking, I made an executive decision with this upright prairie coneflower that I was going to start with the yellow. And I was noticing on these petals, I know it's probably a little hard for you to see. I'll zoom in on my reference here. Whoop, 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 whoop. But you can kind of see, I apologize for the blurriness of it. There's really not any gradients going on here, so the colors don't bleed together. So I made the decision to leave a hard line instead of melting those two colors together. So basically what I'm going to have to do is come back after the yellow dries and add in the red separately. But I think that will be, we can easily do that when we're doing the head and the stem too, since there's that separation of the colors. Again, this is just a watercolor specific thing, and you guys could be using whatever materials you have to journal coneflowers with me. But yeah, with watercolors, if you don't want things to bleed together and feather out and get weird, you gotta separate the different parts of the painting you're working on. So I'm gonna let this dry, and I've done as much as I can with the sections that are not touching, and that's gonna let me go on. Actually, I have not. That's a lie. Okay, so looking at like the divisions, we've got like no color on the stem, color on the bottom of the petals, no color in the center, color at the top, and then I left this part blank, this part of the head that's actually gone to flower. And this is, so these are, hello, welcome. It's good to see you. Anyway, these are members of like the same family as sunflowers. So we can think of the center of these flowers as being really similar to the center of the sunflower, where there's like very tiny little flowers blooming here, and then the outer flowers are the ones producing these really large petals. It's kind of weird like that. Anyway, so these are the flowers that are blooming, and the center of the head here has not bloomed yet, if that makes sense. And basically what I'm getting at is that I could color this part too, because I'd have that like no color, no color, no, yeah. Every other thing, band, whatever, we'll do that. It's a little bit of a warm gray, warm neutral. I'm gonna mix my favorite neutral here I have, which is this like, I think it's called Moon Glow. Yeah, I did pencil in the names around the edges, but they've worn off after how many years of painting on top of them. So I'm gonna use this like Moon Glow, and I'm gonna add a little bit of this sepia to it to warm it up. And I'm not gonna make it super dark because it's very pale on this picture. But then I'll just kind of drop it in. That works. It's a little bit grayer than I would have liked, but that's okay. We'll just make a point to make, I think when we get some other coneflowers on here that are very cool toned, it'll look different enough that it'll work. Cool. And this is just a little side note. I like made a little bit more pigment settle in the bottom here. I was dapping on it just then, just to kind of give the illusion of some three-dimensionality and some shadows with very minimal effort. But yeah, welcome to the stream, Manu. We are working on some coneflowers. We're looking at different types of coneflowers, just seeing what kind of variety there is out there. I'm using watercolors to color them this morning, and we've got 3 done already, which is pretty exciting. Let's see. Oh, we're going to call this one Upright Prairie Coneflower, or I think it's just Upright Coneflower double check because it has so many names. No, it's the upright prairie coneflower. That's the name that I saw most recently my local garden center using for it. So that's what I'm going to choose to call it. Again, it has like 10 million names though. So I recommend, especially if you're trying to buy a specific plant for your garden, look at the scientific name. I know that it's kind of hard or weird if you're not, especially if you're not like a botanist, to be like Ratidiba columnifera, but that is the best way with plants to know that you're getting the species you want, since you know, there's so many different common names for plants. It's not standardized the way birds are. You were in Japan for 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's so exciting. How was Japan? Did you do any nature journaling while you were there? Let's see. I'm gonna pick a new plant. Maybe we'll do... Should we do this one, the gray-headed coneflower? Oh, that's so funny. I know it as the gray-headed coneflower, but it also is called the gray head coneflower. Gray-headed Mexican hat, pinnate prairie coneflower, yellow coneflower, gray-head Mexican hat. Goodness gracious, yeah. See, this is why it's helpful to at least write down the scientific name and then look for that when you go to the store. You don't have to memorize it or anything, but that could be helpful. Yeah, okay, this is very fun. I love how thick the petals are. It's very much skirt-like. It looks like a little fairy skirt almost. Isn't that fun? And I like the ones where you can see that the flowers at the bottom are blooming and the ones at the top haven't quite bloomed yet. So let's do that. I'm going to pick one of those to look at. I'll zoom in a little bit more so we can see it. Or so that you guys can see it easier. Look at that. So fun. Okay. Slowly working my way through my coffee here. Let's do that little guy over in this area, I think. I love how like delicate these round ones look compared to some of the others. Cuz the little like head of the flower at the center is just so small compared to the petals. Okay. It's also interesting to me that it's called like gray-headed coneflower. Like I feel like there's so many names that you could have picked for this plant. And I'm trying to, like, the shape is interesting. It's not exactly a circle. Like the tip is very rounded. Thank you. Oh, you went alone. That's exciting. I would honestly be a little bit nervous to travel totally by myself. But I guess it can be a huge blessing to be able to, like, totally control your itinerary and see the things that you want to see without negotiating with other people and stuff. That would be pretty fun. Thank you. All right. I think I've done the balance on this a little wrong because I made this so big and I was just commenting on how large the petals were. But it's okay. I think using up the page is good. We don't have that many more flowers to draw. So, like, this guy's taking up so much space. This one deserves to take up space too, okay? That's what I'm going to tell myself. Okay, the overall shape, again, is very, like, fairy skirt, and I love that. Yeah, let's try not being precise. There you go. Giving myself a pep talk over here about perfectionism. An ant! I currently have an ant infestation specifically in my ceiling. And the pest control that came out did not stick. They are still there, so they're going to have to come back out again. So, had an ant crawling on my watercolor palette. That's diabolical. Get out of here. Ah, so fun. I feel like, okay, the thing I want to focus on, because I want to capture the overall shape of this, and that's a much bigger concern for me, right? So I'm going to focus on like the negative space instead of being like, where's each individual petal that I can draw? I'm going to look for the edges of the flower. So I've got like this coming up in here. I'm going to come back around. This has a pretty narrow tip. And then it comes up and makes a little space there. And then this has a much larger space in it. I just gave myself a pep talk about not being precise, and here I am doing it again. Look, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I can't help myself. I can try. I do try. I guess in some ways in nature journaling that can be a benefit because I'm really paying close attention to the fine details. There we go. I said a positive thing about that. And I think on this page, I've got the things about this flower that I really wanted to capture, which is just how thick these leaves are, how much like a very full skirt, like a dancing skirt this is. And it turned out beautifully. Okay. Now this is a much, much warmer color than the upright prairie coneflower was. I'm going to do the same thing we did over here, where I'm going to do the top of the plant. I did not do that on this one, you'll notice, and that's because it was touching the petal there, so I wasn't able to. I didn't really explain that out loud while it was happening, so just making a note of that. I'm going to start with a sepia color, and then what I'm going to do is, 'cause it's very, very warm, almost reddish, so I've started with a neutral base, and I'm going to go ahead and add this like rust iron oxide to it, which is quite red, but it does dry very brown. I honestly could probably just straight up use the rust iron oxide for it, but we're going to mix it with the sepia. Oh, thanks, Rob. You're so welcome. I try to explain like my thought process out loud while I'm going so that it is a little bit easier and accessible for other people to try. And I think what's like important to keep in mind with nature journaling like this, you know, if your goal is to create art, like, you know, you set your own goal for what you're trying to do, right? But with nature journaling, really my goal right now is just to like learn about these things and just to take some time observing them really closely. And so whatever my end result looks like is going to accomplish that goal. Like, you don't have to be a perfect artist. And in fact, by like allowing yourself the freedom to just explore things through art without the end goal of creating art, I think you free yourself up to develop art skills more, because art really is a skill. It's a skill, and most of the skill is observation, like being able to like notice what's there and pay attention to those details, which is like a huge part of science and naturalism, right? But you know, the other part is technique, and that just comes with practice and learning from people. Like, I didn't figure this out myself. I learned from watching other people do it and listening to their thought processes and like adopting little bits and pieces from other people's processes too, you know? So, yeah, it makes me really glad, I guess is what I'm trying to say, to hear that this inspires you to try, because I think that is one of my ultimate goals with doing these streams. Like, I think sometimes we put art on this really high pedestal and think like, oh, you have to be like born with the right talent or something to to pursue it or to even like try to engage with it. And I don't know, if you didn't get an opportunity to really explore it as a child or something, you know, sometimes people I think feel like they can't get started, or they feel embarrassed to even try because what if it doesn't look perfect? And it's like, well, it's okay. Nobody's gonna start off perfect, and imperfect art is art. Like that is still art. Like your goals for the thing that you're creating are going to be different from other people, and it doesn't have to look like a perfect recreation to be art, you know? Anyway, I think nature journaling is the perfect way to both develop art skills and develop science skills. And I think everybody should try it. Just be kind to yourself. You gotta be kind to yourself. Okay. And, you know, the materials you use can make it look different too. So, like, you know, if you're using cardstock or something and you're using like cheap watercolors, it's not gonna look like as the same as somebody else's pigments. So I think it's really important not to compare your work, but to look at your work as its own thing and focus on what your goals were and how your own art looks. I did never go back and color in this kestrel's wing spots, by the way. So sorry about that. I saw it when I like opened my sketchbook and I was like, no, I said I was going to do that and I didn't. I did go in and like try to fix his beak because, again, talking about like imperfect art, I was like, ooh, I didn't do his beak right, so I colored over it with white. I'm just outing myself as a perfectionist there. Okay. An unnecessary perfectionist. It looked fine before. I'm fussing with this, which is not what you're supposed to do. I normally am like, don't fuss with your watercolors once you've got it on the page. But I did smear my knuckles all over it when I turned to the page just then, so there we go. It's yellow. Yellow is a very forgiving color. Let's look at some other... Oh, I gotta label it. Which color or which name should we choose for this one? Gray-headed coneflower is what I've always heard, so I'm going to use that. Gray-headed. There we go. Beautiful. We definitely have time to add another one. Should we do the Rudbeckia, this Black-Eyed Susan? Which, yeah, that's a coneflower. Look how fuzzy it is. This is going to look so different from the other ones. That's really fun. There's even more that we could do. I like I like how it's kind of going in every direction. Those petals aren't, you know, super indicative of the species. Is that the right way to say what I'm trying to say? Like, look at the one in the background. Those petals are going straight down, so it doesn't have to be like a wild like this one is. I do like that you can see these little tiny individual flowers on it, though, as they're blooming. That kind of reminds me of the sunflowers, right? So I mentioned that these are like in the same family as sunflowers, and so that's what's happening on this flower head. It's very similar to like a sunflower if you like blew up the center like a balloon, right? Yeah, let's add, let's scoot it up a little bit, actually. Black-Eyed Susan, and sometimes these guys don't have the red, I believe. I say that because I immediately gaslit myself, like, hang on, is that a different species of Black-Eyed Susan? How many flowers do we call Black-Eyed Susan? Probably more than one. Okay, so we've got that. It's narrower at the top and broad at the bottom. So it's kind of in between these super round ones and the super flat ones, which is interesting. And then it's got this little flower crown going on. I'm just going to draw a circle there to sort of indicate where it is. How interesting. And I mean, I guess that works. And then for this one, let's try fixing my perfectionism and just drawing the petals the way that they feel. I noticed that they are really, really, really skinny where they enter the seed head right there. So blue. I'm gonna draw like where they should enter, like that. And then yeah, let's just add some petals. How far down should it go? Like maybe to here would feel right. And then it immediately gets quite thick. And then quite thin. It almost looks lobed, so it's like there's like a W at the bottom, right? Like pew, like that. So that's the way I'm gonna draw it. And then I think almost like more important than how these petals turn out, I'm noticing like the bottom of the flower, and you can see so many sepals. That's that green part on the bottom of the flower that looks like petals, but they're, green. They're like leaves. Those are sepals. And I'm noticing that they're extremely hairy. Nothing else we've done so far has been like that. Like they're very large sepals, very hairy sepals. So I want to make sure we put that on there. Here we go. And then let's just, I don't want to overlap with that, so we're going to just take some artistic liberty there. Perfect. That'll work. Okay, and now we got to do those hairy sepals. Let's see. Pew. The way, since I didn't draw it like all weird like that one is, I didn't leave enough room for the sepals to really show through, so I am gonna fix this one petal and maybe make it a little bit narrower. That didn't actually do anything, did it? Ooh, nope. That's okay. Let's see. The stem is quite thick on this one as well. Interesting. Okay. Let's let this sepal stick out. We're just gonna use a little artistic license here. I don't want those. Sorry, I just noticed that the tip of it was hitting right where the stem ends, and that's just ugly. So we're gonna fix that. All right. Cool, that'll work. And I'm gonna make it hairy. Hair. And the stem is also hairy. My poor little gray-headed label is merging into this. Let me fix that without smearing the paint. All right, that'll work. Woo! Okay. I love that, Rob, in your comment, you also said that you were going to try it with stained glass, and that's so exciting. That's so cool. What a fun idea. I love the fact that you saw this activity and you were like, yeah, you know what would be really fun is like doing this activity in a totally different, like super unique medium like that. This would look so cool in stained glass, all of these different coneflowers. I would straight up buy something like that. What a technical art form as well to try this with. That's so cool. I love it. Okay, not my favorite coneflower on here, but that's okay. I'm gonna leave it alone. And, okay, you know what I'm noticing? As I'm trying to strategize for how to do the colors on this, there's like a little bit of feathering. Do you see that on the edges? There is a little bit of feathering in between the red and the yellow. And I think that watercolor could capture that in a really fun way. So let's try and just see what happens. The first thing I'm going to do is get some yellow on the brush. I'm going to add this little flower crown. Boop, 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 boop. I'm just going to add a bunch of yellow dots up here. That'll work. Okay. And then I'm gonna start from the bottom, and I'm just gonna, oh, this is risky. Okay. Oh, I should have thought about this before I started going. It's too late. It's too late. Okay. So I'm gonna add in the yellow. Should I add yellow in all of them? Oh no, panic, panic, panic. Well, let's just add yellow in all of them. No panic, no panic. I definitely thought this through before I started. No, I didn't. It's okay. It's okay. We'll make it work. It'll look cool no matter what. I'm going to go a little bit higher up than I want it to actually be, so it'll bleed in really fun ways. I'm basically going to like let it bleed together because I think that would be really cool. All right, let's just go ahead and add red to those. Oh dear goodness gracious. True red. True red is too bright. Let's add rust iron oxide to it to tone it down a little bit. Whoa, 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 whoa. All right, let's see what happens. Oh gosh. Ooh, this is kind of working for me. Okay. Very fun. I'm gonna come down a little bit with it. Okay. Sure, that works. There is yellow at the top, and I think I'm just gonna add it now. Oh gosh, that's not gonna work the way I thought it would. That's okay. Because then it'll kind of like bleed out a little bit. I thought that would look cool. I guess it kind of does. It's not quite the effect I wanted, but that's okay. Fantastic. Okay, so for the others, maybe what I'll do is add the yellow at the top actually first. And then add yellow here. And I think it's okay if it bleeds a little bit. I'm not too worried about that because I think that the overall effect will still look fine. On some sketches, I would not say that, and I'd be like, oh, I can't let the colors touch. But, I mean, for this, it's, I think, just fine. So I've got, again, the true red, and I'm adding some rust iron oxide just to take the edge off of it a little bit. And, yeah, we're going to come back in here and feather this out. And I'm going to let it bleed, and it's going to look cool, I think. And I'm going to add some little streaks just to like enhance that sort of feathered effect. All right, cool. Let's see what happens. I'm going to add a little bit more red in there, and then I'm going to drop it and not touch it again. Woo! All right. Because that's what you do with watercolor. You drop it in, and then you leave it alone. Once everything's the way you like it. It's like, it gets to a certain threshold of wet where you just can't touch it anymore, because if you do, it'll just like adding more water to the mix will just upset everything that's going on and like cause a huge bloom. And in this case, I wanted that. I wanted the bloom. I thought it would look cool. But most of the time, I'm not really trying to do that. Sometimes it can be like a fun effect, but not this time. Gang, I think, like, I've got space for one more, but it is also 9 o'clock, and I do have to go about the rest of my day. So I think maybe what we should do at this point is go back to the beginning and finish up the centers of these flowers. So let's start with our purple coneflower, our Eastern purple coneflower. Oh, I forgot to write the name of this one down. This is our black-eyed Susan. Let's write it over here. Perfect. Yay, okay. How am I going to get that bright of an orange? Okay, I'm gonna take this color we already mixed up for the red on the petals here. Ooh, actually, speaking of that red on the petals, that's like the perfect color for this other coneflower. Maybe before I mess that up, I will just use it on this little guy here. Brilliant, brilliant. Oh, what a beautiful color. Okay. Let's do it. And I did choose the red first the yellow first kind of strategically because the red will kind of go over it a bit. So I don't think it'll be super noticeable that the edges aren't, lined up necessarily, and that the red is kind of covering up the top of it a bit. I don't think that it'll show, if that makes sense. Cool, and then we've got a little bit of red there. Done! Look at that, we did it! Our upright prey coneflower. Cool. I'm pleased. Okay, now we can mess up that color. I'm going to make it a bright orange, let me pull up our reference again. Ooh, where did it go? Whoop, there it is. All right, in order to do that, I think what I'm gonna do is add this yellow to it. And I'm choosing the one that's already kind of reddish because I think it'll mix well. Like I could choose the super bright yellow, but the one that's closer to red already will, I think, keep it a little bit bright instead of diluting it, if that makes sense. If I do something that's too far away from the original color, it'll end up looking a little bit weird. Okay, cool. I think this is a good color. I think I added too much red, actually. Here we go. Let's see what happens. Ooh! So it is quite, like spiky, I guess. So we'll try to capture that spikiness. And yes, there are dark spots in there toward the bottom, which I'm just going to choose not to worry about at this time. Because I really can't mess with that while the light paint is wet. Cool, I'm going to remove some paint in places. I got my brush a little bit dry. And then I'm coming back in. It's still damp, obviously, but it's a little bit drier, so it'll soak up some of that extra pigment and make it lighter in places. And I kind of treated that like reverse painting a little bit, so, adding some variation to that little seed head. Fun, that'll work. Let's paint the stem while we're in there. I'm gonna get this gross poopy azo green, which is one of my favorite colors in this palette because it looks so beautiful with other pigments when it's mixed. Okay, and I'm gonna come, I'll do it on the screen here so you can see. I'll just come in here and I'm gonna add our little Prussian blue to it and create some really beautiful natural greens. And I'm gonna leave it more of this like azo green so that it's a little bit yellower, because that's what it looks like in the actual picture. And there we go. We've got some little sepals and a stem. Fantastic. Love it. Adding more pigment to the top where it's in shadow, just to kind of naturally create an accidental shadow effect. While it's wet, you can do that, so you might as well. Pretty easy. I'm also going to come in with this pale purple coneflower. Let me pull it up here. It's very reddish on this stem, on this image. So I'm going to mix what's already on my brush with this sort of purple down here. And paint that in. Cool. That'll work. Moving right along, we got this little seed head. In this image, it looks fairly purple too. I can't tell if that's just the way that the color was graded on this picture, but you know, whatever, that's okay. What I'm gonna do is make sort of a purple with my Prussian blue. This stuff gets used all the time. It's one of my favorite colors in this palette. I'm gonna add this rose red to it to make a really beautiful purple color, which I'm immediately going to ruin. Gosh, it's such a beautiful purple. Oh, why am I showing you my brush? You can't see that, it's black. Oh gosh, okay. So I've got this purple color, beautiful. Now I do need to make it a little bit brownish. And I'm doing this instead of the neutral just because I felt like this was really colorful, I guess. I'm gonna come up here to this brown that's drying and kind of mix this purple that's on my brush with the brown. And we're gonna use that to start. Awesome. Now probably the way that I would approach this, or that I will approach this, is to like add a little bit of, you know, blah 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 interest on the edges here with my brush while it's doing this like base layer basically. And then the center seems like it's the darkest, so I'm going to go ahead and add more pigment there in the darker part. So I'm just like dropping extra pigment in there, and then it's going to spread out and kind of, yeah, blend together nicely. I'm going to dry my brush a little bit, and I'm going to come in and take away some of the pigment on the outside edge. So I'm just kind of like basically shading this in before it's even dry, so that by the time it dries, it looks like it has like all of this variation and interest. And see how I kind of like picked up almost like little spikes from it. And so when it dries, probably what I would do then is go in and add some darker areas. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get this light a little bit better. Yeah, this doesn't quite show up on camera super well. But yeah, you can see where I lifted the pigment up, and it's kind of creating the illusion of little spikes and some variation on the page. And as it dries, I'm going to do the same thing just to give it more definition, because it will just kind of spread out and do some work while it's drying. And then, yeah, when it fully dries, going back in and adding the dark parts back over it to give it more definition. Because, you know, with watercolor, again, it's transparent, so I can always add more dark stuff on top. I cannot make it lighter. So if I want parts of this to be lighter, they have to be lighter now before it dries. And at this point, if I added any water to that, it would ruin everything. It would like bloom out and look weird. So I cannot add any more water, but I can still take a little bit of it away. Cool. That's the pale purple. I'm pleased with that. Let's get this upright prairie coneflower, or the Mexican hat. Let's see, what is even happening with this color? It's like very greenish, isn't it? I'm noticing some reddish, and I'm noticing it's very, very neutral. So I think for this I am going to start with a neutral base, this like sepia base. And I don't know, somebody once told me that you really shouldn't use just a pure neutral like sepia because, I don't know, it looks bad or something. I don't remember the logic behind it, but that stuck with me for some reason. So now I feel like I can't really use sepia or Payne's gray, those like common neutrals by themselves. And I don't know if that's like actually necessary, but I do think that sticking myself in that box does let me make some interesting colors. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is that it's nice to create some interesting colors instead of just going with like whatever color you squeezed out of a tube. I think that kind of fits how nature is too. It's a little bit unique, you know? So what I did was I took that sepia and then I mixed the azo green and a little bit of red with it. I noticed that it looked a little greenish on the picture, so I was like, ooh, that could be pretty fun to have like a little bit of the azo green in there, giving it like an interesting color. I don't know if it'll look exactly like the picture, but that's the thing that I noticed, and so that's the thing that I'm going to put in my nature journal as I'm describing this plant. Yay! Oh, that was fun. I think that turned out nice. I'm going to, I know it looks really, the glare is right there on the painting, but you can see like how wet this spot is right now, right? That'll be really fun to watch dry. While it's still wet, I am going to take some of the paint off of this side so that it's like, shaded automatically. And you can see on the glare here what that looks like, right? Like I'm taking away the globs of paint with my damp but dry brush. And then you can see how all the paint, it's pooling at the bottom. That's perfect because it means the pigment is going to pool at the bottom too, and it's going to look really cool. I am going to go ahead and add some back at the top. It's still, you can see how shiny it is. That means it's still wet enough for me to mess with it a bit without totally ruining everything. But I'm gonna have to stop here soon. So I'm gonna stop there and I'm gonna let it dry and do its magic and not touch it again. Now this stem is very bright, very vibrant. I'm gonna mix azo green over here with my Prussian blue to make a much more vibrant green. I'm gonna have a little bit more blue in there to make it more vibrant. Oh, you can't see it, but trust me, pretty vibrant. And then we'll just kind of swoop that in here. Beautiful. I feel like that's a color that'll work well for the Black-Eyed Susan as well. Which, testing with the back of my hand, is still a little bit wet. I'm hopeful that when we come back over here and finish this gray-headed coneflower, that this will be dry enough. It's certainly dry enough on the bottom, because it was just that yellow paint. So we can come in on the bottom here, and then hopefully this will be dry by the time we're ready to do that. Haha, I love it when the timing works out well on watercolors. It's so annoying. Like I could go grab a blow dryer or something and just force it to dry early, but what fun is that? Okay, this one again, a little bit more reddish. I think this is the one that originally what I did for this like unbloomed center was I took that sort of red iron oxide and mixed it with the sepia. So I'm going to do that again and just maybe make it darker or have like higher concentration of the red iron oxide. Let me add some more water to that real quick. My palette's getting so mixed up. I'm going to have to clean it at some point. Which, what that looks like is basically getting it wet and then like dabbing off the top layers of paint that are really, really mixed with other colors until you get the pure color underneath it. I don't have to scrape the palette clean and waste any of the colors to get it a bit more pure. Okay. See how dark this is? It's very, very pigmented, very little water. So that is going to let this really be differentiated from the top, even though it's the same mix of colors. And I'm working quick while it's still wet, and I'm going to give the edges some variation so you can kind of feel like, oh, it's blooming, there's little structures sticking off of it, it's fuzzy and three-dimensional, and in that way different from the center. Cool. Okay, that turned out really, really nice. I'm quite pleased. And I think that this color is going to work really well for the Black Eyed Susan too. So we can just keep using that over there. Nice. Okay, I'm quite happy with how that turned out. Easy. Done. This is going to be fine. We can reuse that. We have enough pigment left. I'm going to wash it off my brush because I don't think we're ready for that yet. No, we're not. So I'm going to do the green parts of these flowers real quick. And make a little bit more pigment. I watered it down a bit too much. Nice, nice, nice. Fun. And then let's see, where's our Rudbeckia? There it is. It's very cool compared to the other ones. It's not like, you know, super, super cool. But I am going to add a little bit more Prussian blue to sort of capture that. And yeah, let's go in and make these little petals. Sepals. Okay. We are almost done. I'm really excited about how this spread turned out. Oh no, I got my hand in the paint again. And I'm going to make the fuzzies more like prominent with the actual brush and the paint so that it looks like it's on purpose and not just errant pencil marks. Cool. Okay, there we go. And like the stem has these really fun lines in them. I don't know if you can see that in this reference, but I noticed it and I was like, whoa, it almost looks square, but it's not square. It's just like really deeply ribbed or something. So I want to capture that. I'm going to dry this brush off. Dry, 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 dry. And I'm going to come in here and just add some little stripes in to sort of hopefully capture that ribbed look that it has by lifting paint off before it's dry to give it that lighter area. So I've got the areas that are super dark where there's a lot of pigment, and then I'm lifting it up and it's going to make it look striped. Look, it worked. Ah, perfect. Love it. I love watercolors, guys. Watercolors just make everything so straightforward. I'm flipping my dirty napkin over here. Okay. And last but not least, we have the Black Eyed Susan head. All right, how is this feeling? Oh, I cannot believe our luck. It is dry. You can tell when it doesn't feel cool to the touch anymore compared to the rest of the paper. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe we had that luck. Amazing. So yeah, I've got the little, oh, I should check these. Yeah, okay. I assumed they'd be dry, those little like floret blooming petal parts, but I did double check and they are indeed dry. So we're gonna come in here and get this reddish brown we already mixed up for that gray-headed coneflower, and we're gonna make this guy come to life. It could almost be a little bit more purple, honestly. And this isn't turning out as dark as I wanted it to. So I am going to go ahead and panic and add some Prussian blue. That's the decision I'm making. Because since there's some reddish in there, oh gosh, I'm hoping this is going to turn it a little purple and also darken it up a bit. I think instead it's turning green. It'll be fine. Look, we're just going to go for it. Oh, panic. Gotta work while it's wet. That's why I'm panicking. Gotta get all the colors in there before it starts to dry. Okay, well, that'll work. And then, cool. Let's go ahead and add some colors to the top here. And this can be a little bit more pale, so I'm not too worried about it being dark. Neat, and then I'm just going to add some little lines going up to the flower crown part. There's those little florets blooming. Interesting, okay. I think that's turned out okay. I'm feeling like something's not quite right about it, so I think what I'm gonna do is just lift off some of the pigment. It looks really dark. It's going to dry lighter anyway, but I think I'm just gonna try to add more variation, especially on the top here. I think maybe I just got a little too much pigment in there when I was adding those little floret stems. I don't know what you'd call those, the coronas? Is that what you would call? Because it is like a little flower tube, technically. Okay, so I'm taking off some stuff there to give it more variation. I think that'll work. We're gonna go bloop, 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 bloop. And if I wanted to, I'd come back in and add a lot more variation with some like dark specks, which I think is kind of what it looks like on the actual flower itself. And that would look fine. Now, to finish up, this is fully dry, so I can come in. I'm just going to use whatever I've got on the page here. Sepia, Payne's Gray, whatever. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm going to finish up this one. I'm trying not to get my hand in the wet paint. It's very hard to paint negative space. Like I did these nice little drops of of orange down below where the dark is. Oh, this is so precise. I don't personally like it when watercolor has little white spots left in between colors. That's just like a personal preference. I think it looks a little unfinished, and yeah, I just don't like the way that it looks. So I'm trying to fill in the gaps, but then the trouble with that is sometimes it doesn't turn out quite the way you want it. But I think that looks great. Yeah, that turned out really good. I'm also going to come in and add some little spikies to our pale purple coneflower just for fun, since I have this ultra dark color on my brush already. Nice. Oh, that's so fun. It turned out really good. Guys, I'm so pleased with this spread. I really like how it turned out. I love all the different shapes that I managed to get on the page, which was my ultimate goal, was to really capture just the variety in all of these coneflowers. We have this very standard coneflower with that like flat top, very orange, very purple. It probably could have been more purple, but some of them I see are quite pale and others are very vibrant. So this still is in the realm of, you know, what it looks like. This very pale purple coneflower with the very rounded head. We have the Mexican hat or upright prairie coneflower with this like really tall little stalk on it and these very thick and short petals. We have the black-eyed Susan, very popular, with just all around a chunkier, much different flower shape. And then finally this gray-headed coneflower, which is fairly round on top and has this like, it's like the same shape of this, I don't know, skirt, almost like a fairy skirt, but a little bit more full coverage, less wispy and delicate and more like a robust tutu or something. But yeah, that's our coneflower spread. Room for more, but I am out of time for today, so I gotta get out of here. Thank you so much for joining the stream. I hope you learned something. I hope you'll try yourself. And the next time you're outside, take a look at all the different flowers around. You might notice that some of the ones that look very similar are actually quite different if you sit down and get to know them a little bit more intimately. And thanks so much for joining the stream, everybody. Have a wonderful Tuesday. I'll catch you next week.